Today we're talking about the 1980s winter slasher that is sure to leave blood tracks in the snow. It's the Swedish hair metal slasher Blood Tracks from 1985. Vinegar Syndrome just released this on Blu-ray. I'm excited to talk to you guys about it, so let's do it. What's going on, my friends? Welcome again to the Cobwebs channel. My name is Daniel, and the Swedish slasher Blood Tracks was directed by a very prolific Swedish filmmaker named Matt Helge Olsson. He also made movies like The Ninja Mission and Russian Terminator, and was referred to by Amanda Reyes, who did a commentary track on this Blu-ray, as the Roger Corman of Sweden. Some additional directorial duties fell on Derek Ford, who also made Don't Open Till Christmas. Vinegar Syndrome fans probably know about him. And starring Jeff Harding, Michael Fitzpatrick, Naomi Kanada, Harriet Robinson, and Tina Shaw. So you may be wondering why I called this a hair metal slasher. Well, that's because the plot of this film is about a glam rock band who travels out to the mountains of Sweden to film a music video. It's the director, some tech folks, some beautiful girls who are there to dance in the video, as well as the band that is played by real-life Swedish rock band Easy Action. They actually get to perform in the movie too, and they're not terrible actors, to be honest. They're not actors, and they were actually very nervous about making this movie. The story goes that the director actually got them all liquored up to combat their nervousness, so you get a lot of drunk performances in this movie. But yes, real rock band is here, so this film has got like a really fun, authentic 80s rock kind of vibe. But while they're there in the snowy mountains, they come in contact with some kind of strange family that has been living out there for decades and does not want to give up their privacy at any cost. So I had never seen Blood Tracks before, but I was very excited to check it out because I love snowy slasher movies. It's such a very small little subgenre. I mean, I love 80s slashers in general, but if they take place way out in the snow, I think that's really cool because in general, I just really love the atmosphere of snowy movies. I actually just did a video about a lot of snowy horror movies that I like. Not only is it very beautiful, and it certainly is out in the Swedish mountains, it was actually filmed right around a ski lodge, so this is a tourist attraction. People come out here to look at this beautiful snowy atmosphere, and in the movie, you get to look at it. And so all that's very cool, but also I feel like horror movies that take place out in the snow, they have this added element of peril, of danger, because even if nothing scary happens, nothing comes out to kill you, the snow all on its own could kill you. And I gotta say, Blood Tracks, it felt particularly cold because most of the characters in this film are not set up for being out in the snow. They're not dressed for it. They're not all dressed in coats and scarves and hats, you see.
Yeah, I'm gonna freeze my tits off.
I mean, the makers of Blood Tracks, they clearly wanted to deliver on all of the different ways that a slasher film is supposed to deliver. And one of those is, the sexuality aspect that a lot of these movies have. So you do get a lot of scantily clad women, including scantily clad dudes. They're all in their glam rock 80s outfits. They're not dressed to be out in the snow, but here they are. And I just felt cold watching them. There's even this ridiculous scene where a couple, one of the band members and one of the girls there, they want to run off to have sex because it's a slasher movie. Of course they do. But their idea is to go off into the car to have sex. Now, that's a pretty normal thing in a slasher movie. But normally, you're not in like sub-zero temperatures out in the snowy mountains of Sweden. So they get into this car and start doing their thing. And you're just thinking, aren't you freezing cold? Funny part about that moment is that's right when an avalanche hits. Yes, the horror of this movie, it's not just from a scary family. It's not just from the snow in general. It's from an avalanche that traps our characters there. And the avalanche piles onto this car and they're now buried in the snow. People got to dig them out. And the girl is completely naked. So it's crazy. This movie's got some wacky scenes up its sleeve beyond just typical slasher kills, that's for sure. Now, right when you start Blood Tracks, you might notice that the film seems to be dubbed.
We're in big trouble.
And if you're used to watching Italian movies, Italian genre films from this time period, you might be kind of used to that. And honestly, I didn't know it was a Swedish film when I started watching it. So I kind of thought, is this Italian? What's going on here? But then some of the characters definitely seemed American, but that's kind of consistent with Italian films. Turns out it's Swedish, but the biggest reason that there's dubbing is not because they're speaking Swedish. There's actually a lot of American actors in this film. It's because they recorded the sound with the mic hanging off of a fishing pole that they hung over the actors. They tried to record the sound that way. it didn't work out, as you can imagine. They ended up just having to redub the entire thing after the fact. So the performances do feel kind of off because of that. But as a whole, the performances aren't that bad. They're certainly not great. They have their moments bordering on the so bad it's good kind of territory.
That's bad. I got things going on here you wouldn't believe.
Now you've got two kind of main characters. The movie's an ensemble, but if you want to say main characters, you've got the guy who's kind of the guide who comes in to show them where they're going to be filming. I guess he's from the area. He's played by an American actor, but what are you going to do? And then he meets who seems to be the lead actress of the film. She's kind of set up to be like the singer of the band. And they start to have, they hit it off and they have a little bit of a romance. It's a bit of a Hallmark situation, right? She's the girl from the big city. He's a small town guy who's wearing flannel, and maybe he's just going to show her the true meaning of Christmas or winter. This isn't a Christmas movie, but you know what I'm saying.
On Hallmark Channel, the heart of TV.
Funny thing about that character, though, is even though she seems to be set up as the leader, the singer of the band, that was the intention, but the actual band, Easy Action, that plays the band in this movie, we're not too happy with that. They didn't want some other person thrown in to be the singer of their band, and they're like, no, we're not doing that. I'm going to be the lead singer of the band's like, no, I'm going to do the singing. And he does. So that girl set up to be like the lead of the video is never in any of the filming of the video. She's not singing in the band. She's not stancing with the background dancers or anything like that. So it's kind of weird, but you almost might not notice because there are a lot of beautiful brunettes in this movie who kind of look the same. So it's kind of hard to tell them apart. There's a lot of characters in this film, and it is a little tough to tell them apart at certain points. So when you start to get into the kill scenes, you might be like, I don't remember for sure who that person is, but they just died in a very gruesome way, so I guess that's fun. There's interviews with several of the actors on this Vinegar Syndrome disc, which is really fun, and they talk about how making this movie was really just like a party. They all knew exactly what they were signing up for. They went out and did the job. Apparently, the band themselves really made it a party, and hanging out with them was really fun. So it just sounds like making this film was a really good vibe, and I think that comes across. Sometimes that's what you need in these 80s slasher films. Like, they're not particularly well written, well acted, but if you can tell that the actors are having a good time, that does a lot for it. And I think you do get that in Blood Tracks. It feels like a genuinely fun time that these actors are having on camera for you. And that's what you need. Like what you need to lead up to the bloody kills. You just need people having some good times, some good vibes, and it's just enjoyable to watch. And you do get that for sure in Blood Tracks, as well as that great atmosphere of the snowy mountains that's certainly different from from most other slasher films of this time period, except maybe, curtains. Okay, but let's talk about the horror of the film. Where's it coming from? Who is this scary face looking dude on the cover of the slipcover? Well, you get a little prologue at the beginning of the movie where some drunken, mean, abusive dad comes home. His wife's trying to get rid of him, trying to protect the kids, and she ends up stabbing him to death. And then they're like, we gotta get out of here. We gotta run from the law. So they run away. And that's the only backstory you get. So I'm like, okay, what's it going to be? Is this dad going to come back to life or something? The basic pitch of this movie is kind of The Hills Have Eyes, but in the snow. Or more specifically, as the commentators on the commentary here point out, The Hills Have Eyes Part 2 in the snow, because Part 2 is kind of the trashier slasher version of it. I would say Blood Tracks is better than The Hills Have Eyes Part 2, but also I don't hate The Hills Have Eyes Part 2. So there you go. It's about this family who escaped after killing the dad, just hiding out in the mountains, and they've been there ever since. Now, most of the main killers that you get in this movie are the brothers of this family, who have really scarred up faces, as you can see, this scary looking guy here on the cover. And the entire time watching the movie, I didn't know what the deal was with that. I didn't know why their faces were like that. It's never really explained, but I learned from one of the interviews with one of the actors that the idea was they have frostbite. So it's just from really hard living way out in the cold for decades. They have really bad frostbite. That's why they look so scary. One of them in particular looks real scary. His face got really messed up, and it's a pretty good makeup job. I did like the makeup in this movie overall, but probably the most interesting fact I learned about this film from one of the interviews, it was with the main actor, and his name was Jeff Harding. I really liked that. That was my favorite of the interviews. He said that the guy who did the makeup from this movie axe murdered his wife, and he got out of prison and did this movie. And apparently he never spoke a word the entire time, did their makeup in complete silence, and everyone was pretty scared of this guy. That's crazy. That's real life slasher movie stuff right there on the set with this one guy. I don't know. I guess that kind of thing happens with Swedish movies, I suppose. I can't imagine an axe murderer working on the set of a movie in America. Maybe I'm naive. Maybe there's a lot of them, but I thought that was fascinating. But yeah, the makeup pretty good, but the gore is solid. And that's what you need, right? For an 80s slasher movie. And that's probably what you've been sitting right there thinking, Daniel, what about the kills? What about the gore? For a while, I wasn't so sure because you got a little bit of kills towards the beginning of the movie. Actually, the director himself is in the film and he's one of the first victims, but there's nothing special about the kills. And I was like, come on, what are we going to do? What are we going to do here? But when we get into the third act, they ramp it up and there is gory kill after gory kill after gory kill. There's a lot of them. They're pretty darn good. The stereotype of 80s slasher movies is they're absolute gore fests, and that's not really true. If you watch most 80s slasher films, they're not going to be near as gory as most of the stuff that you see today, unless you're talking about something real extreme like Blood Rage or Pieces. I mean, those are legendary gore films. But a lot of the stuff in the 80s, it's a little more tame, especially when you get into those later Friday the 13th movies. But Blood Tracks is one that gives it to you. It really does. Like, there's one kill where a guy bites somebody's eyeball out. There's one Terrifier style kill. It's something that Art the Clown actually does in the first Terrifier movie, the most iconic kill of that. But it's really, really quick, so it's not quite as impactful, but still, A for effort, they went there. I thought that was really cool. And because there are a lot of characters, there's a lot of kills, there's some good gore, I thought the movie delivered in that way. It delivers entirely for what you want a slasher movie to be. It's got a lot of sex and nudity. It has got a lot of goofy stuff, people hanging out. It's got 80s rock. It's got gore. That actor Jeff Harding talked about how he knew exactly what he was signing up for when he read the script. The movie turned out exactly how he expected it to. He knew it was going to be a schlocky horror movie, but he said he loves schlocky horror movies, and that always makes me happy to hear when an actor just genuinely is a fan of this stuff and like isn't ashamed of it or anything like that. And Blood Tracks is not a great film for sure. The story is not great. The performances, the characters are not great. It's not going to set the world on fire as the undiscovered slasher gem of all time, but it is entertaining. It's fun. I would say in terms of these like undiscovered low budget slashers that Vinegar Syndrome puts out, I'd say Blood Tracks is definitely better than average. The transfer looks fantastic. You can actually watch Blood Tracks in full here on YouTube, and it's the VHS rip, and it looks pretty rough. And there's a lot of dark scenes in this movie. And when I was looking at those on YouTube, I mean, you can barely tell what's going on, but here everything is crystal clear. It looks fantastic. It's every bit what you expect at a Vinegar Syndrome Blu-ray release at this point. Looks great, and that's just so wonderful that they're releasing these VHS curiosities that could only be watched in really bad quality. That's probably going to be distracting, going to decrease from your experience, but they released them looking crystal clear the way they looked when they premiered in 35mm back in the day. That's why when people talk about like these old VHS rips and they're like, that's the way the movie is meant to be seen, it should be grimy, it should be gritty. That's not true. This movie was shot on film. They premiered it on film. I'm sure it looked beautiful back then because it was shot on and was premiered in 35mm. This is how it's actually meant to be seen, and I think that's just great. Now, I did hear from one person that they experienced some sound issues with the disc. I personally did not. I thought the sound was great from start to finish, so I don't know. Let me know down in the comments below if you run into any problems like that. And I just love the release in general because it's got totally classic Vinegar Syndrome artwork. All the other releases Vinegar Syndrome put out in November, like The Keep, they have kind of more understated, subtle artwork, but Blood Tracks went totally classic. This is just exactly what you think of when you think Vinegar Syndrome slipcover. I just love it. If you take that slipcover off, you get the original poster art right there. Really fun. It's got a bunch of good interviews on here. It's got a commentary track with some film historians like Amanda Reyes, like I mentioned, and there's one archival featurette about the Easy Action Band, which is cool too. Very fun. If you like low budget 80s slashers, finding those underrated gems, this is one you definitely want to pick up.
Oh, Kim, do you wanna play insane again? Shall we roll a cool body, Kim?